Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Madison Dodds, and I am the Education Outreach Manager here at the Salk Institute. That's this wonderful building right behind me, or shown in this picture here. It's a beautiful place to work. We are located in La Jolla, California, right across the street of the University of California, San Diego. It's one of the most beautiful buildings. It was actually named the most beautiful building in California recently, and it's actually a historical landmark. So this, a lot of times when I meet students, they ask me, what does Salk stand for? So Salk is not an acronym like UCSD. It is actually named for Dr. Jonas Salk, who was a key figure in another public health crisis, the polio epidemic of the 1940s and 50s. He actually developed the first safe and effective polio vaccine. And then he went on to continue his dream and create a place for scientific collaboration, and that became the Salk Institute. So this is a beautiful picture of Dr. Salk, who's standing at the courtyard at sunset. Unfortunately, Dr. Salk has passed away years ago. But this is one of my favorite quotes, is our greatest responsibility is to be good ancestors. And he really believed from the very beginning that students being a part of scientific research is key to being able to continue to drive scientific frontiers. So we are pleased to continue this tradition and welcome you to this 2022 virtual March of Dimes High School Science Week. So the 2020 program has been a little bit unique. You may have already had a chance to check out some of the virtual resources we released earlier this week, like the Meet a PI featuring Assistant Professor Dr. Christy Towers, who talked about her cancer research and her career journey. Or maybe you've tuned in and seen the laboratory demonstration featuring the Regulatory Biology Laboratory of Dr. Daniel Engel, where they highlighted how they use organoid technology in their pancreatic cancer research. And today, we'd like to welcome you to the live career panel featuring a handful of our wonderful Salk scientists and staff members, where they're going to walk you through a little bit about their career journey and give you some additional options and insight to careers that you might not have considered before. For this event, it's really going to be guided by your questions. So using the Zoom Q&A feature, we encourage you to submit questions throughout the presentation. You're welcome to submit them to all the panelists, or if there's maybe a particular panelist that you read their bio and you have a question for them, feel free to write their name first and we can direct the question directly to them. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation. Or if you have a question about any of the programs that I'm about to go over, please feel free to ask. So this is not the only opportunity that we have for high school students. We have another wonderful program, the High Talk Brody High School Summer Scholars Program. This is an 8-week paid internship where students have an opportunity to work side by side with a Salk researcher on an actual project. So you're not just going to be washing glassware. You are not going to just be making solutions, but you're actively going to be learning and contributing to research. And while you're doing this, you're also going to be developing some key scientific communication skills that will help you succeed in future academic and career settings in STEM. Not only are you going to be spending time in the lab, working with your mentor and practicing your presentation with education outreach, but we also have industry visits where you're able to see a different side of science, where we tour a local company. We also have seminars, so you can learn some of these key skills and have some networking and special event opportunities. Take a look at our website, salk.edu/education, for more about the program requirements and to apply. I really want to highlight and emphasize the deadline to apply for this program is April 1st. And that sounds like a long ways away, but it'll be here before we know it. The dates for the program, it takes place every June to August. So if maybe this year you might not meet all the requirements, maybe you're a freshman joining us, it's something that we offer every year, and the application opens in January and typically closes at the end of March. So please take a look at this opportunity. Our panelists will talk a little bit about how their opportunity to do research in labs during their career journey had an impact on them. So I just told you a little bit about our programs. I want to just pause here and I give you an opportunity to see our links. So to find more information about this program and our other programs that we offer, visit salk.edu/education, or you can contact our team with any questions that you have at education@salk.edu. We're pretty responsive, and if you need support completing your application, or you have a specific question about maybe that isn't answered in the FAQ or the frequently asked questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to thank our fabulous supporters that made this possible. So we are so grateful to the Anne and Neil Blue High School Science Fund, and our sincere thanks to the Blue family and all the supporters, partners, and volunteers that make education outreach possible, including the March of Dimes. We are so grateful to be able to provide these opportunities for students to learn and engage, and we are excited to be able to expand beyond San Diego in this virtual medium. So, welcome to March of Dimes High School Science Week. So it is now time to dive in. I would like to pause and be able to introduce our wonderful panelists. So we're going to have our panelists do a brief introduction. If you could please share your name, where you're from, what your career is, and what you love about working in science. So your name, where you're from, your career, and what you love about working in science. And we'll go ahead and get started with Melissa.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Melissa Hernandez-Kelly, Dr. Melissa Hernandez-Kelly. I am a postdoctoral researcher in Dr. Fred Gage's lab. It's a neuroscience genetics lab. And I am from Chula Vista, California. Born in Chula Vista and raised in California most of my life. What I love about science is just being at the forefront of discovery, like learning every day and just watching the field advance, and also just meeting new people and scientists from all over the world. As a researcher, you get to collaborate and just learn about what is going on all over the world. And that's a really amazing way to be connected with the community.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for joining us. We're always happy to have San Diego, represented in all of our events. And we do have another San Diegan, so we'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment. But next, let's introduce Tanisha.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Tanisha Morell, and I am from San Diego, California. Been born and raised here. I moved away to Michigan for about 5 years, and I practiced out there for law. But I'm a homegirl here, so yeah, it's great. I am an attorney. I do intellectual property in-house, and I do all the intellectual property, trademarks, licensing, and all that cool stuff. What I love about science is learning the new things that are coming out, and also the fact that science provides a novel way for people to come up with drugs to be able to help people out. I mean, the reason why most of us are walking and we're not in an iron lung or something is the fact that we had someone in science create a polio vaccine that we were able to use so that we didn't have to go through what these people went through in the 50s. So anyway, that's a little bit of my deal, and I can't wait to talk to everybody a little bit later and answer some questions. Good to see you.
Tanisha, that when you talk about how we don't see more people in the iron lung, one of my favorite questions to ask whenever I interact with students is for them to raise their hand if they know anyone their age that has polio. And then no one does. And then I always like to say, thank you, Dr. Salk, because if we had asked this question in, 1952, that wouldn't be the case. So,
right.
It's awesome to see our progress. All right, next is going to be the lovely Sienna.
Hi, everyone. Like you said, my name is Sienna. I was also born and raised in the San Diego area. I went to high school 30 minutes away from here at Orange Glen High School. So I grew up in Escondido, California. my title right now is just research assistant. I just graduated college, not high school. I went to UC Davis, which is about 8 hours away. And then I came back for right now. I'm applying to PhD programs this year. So I'm kind of in an in-between stage where I just finished college and I'm about to pursue a graduate PhD degree to really focus on science as a career. What I really like most about science is the discovery aspect of it, because I feel like what you do, if you can figure this one thing out, like you're one of the select few people that know this one thing for like a brief second. And then like, it's just all this hard work leads up to this one little thing. And you kind of just like, oh, yay. Like, it's kind of like a big puzzle. And I really like puzzles and answering questions, and I don't stop. Like, I can't put down a puzzle once I pick it up. So I really like how science is a lot of that. And just like, hey, I think that I want to look at this question today, and then we can set up something to like answer it. Like, was I right or was I wrong? And then how can I go from there? I think that was all the questions. Did I miss one?
No, I think you got it. And are your earrings DNA? Are they helix, double helix?
Yeah, the DNA earrings.
I love it. I love those fun science things. I'm a puzzle. I love puzzles like you. And I think that's something about science that some people could find frustrating, that it's like you're never done with science. It's always an ongoing process where we're always learning. So if you like learning, science is for you, because you get to continue to do that for the rest of your life. And I think what a privilege it is to work in where you don't just kind of reach your peak and then you just chill. It's like always more. So that's very cool. Thank you for joining us, Sienna. And last but not least, please introduce yourself, Mark.
Hello, everyone. So my name's Mark Schmidt. I was not born in San Diego. I was born in Topeka, Kansas, but I did grow up here in San Diego. And I was, although I went away to school, I was happy to return. I think San Diego is an awesome place. So I work here, obviously, at the Salk Institute. Well, all these wonderful colleagues of mine. My role is Director of Research Laboratory Operations. And I've had several positions here at the Institute. My background is basically in laboratory research and laboratory management. What I find really energizing about science, a lot of what Sienna just said, I share that kind of passion of discovery, but in addition, I think for me, working with a really diverse group of talented people here at Salk, who each bring kind of something different to the Institute, but who are all committed to helping our team succeed. That's super exciting to me. In my present role, I work with lots of laboratories, including laboratories coming to Salk to do their science here at our institution. And I also work with our core facilities, which are scientific resources that serve as kind of collaboration and technology hubs at the Institute. And sort of, what's exciting to me is sort of helping these teams interact and contributing to their successes, even in an incremental or small way sometimes it feels, but that's a big part of my workday, and that's what kind of excites me about every day here at Salk Institute.
Awesome. I love that you highlighted just how collaborative science is, and especially here at Salk, where there's so many across campus connections. We have so many labs working on the same thing, especially some of these really big problems that require a lot of different approaches, and nobody can be an expert in everything. I also think something I want to mention is, although we have 3 and 4, because I'm also from San Diego, that's actually pretty unique at Salk. I didn't even know, like, usually you have people from all over the country, all over the globe. But we are happy to have you, especially talking to our San Diego community, to be able to get back to see, maybe you sat in some of these students' chairs. So thank you all so much for joining us, and Mark as well for joining us from Topeka, Kansas. That's quite a journey. So our first 3 questions for our panelists have become from pre-submissions, but please, students, feel free to start submitting your questions at any point. So our first question is, what does a day in your life look like for your career? So let's go ahead and get started. Maybe Mark, since I think you might be unmuted, would you mind telling us what does a day look like for your career?
Sure. Happy to do that. I guess I kind of have 2 answers to the question. The first is I basically, drive or bicycle to work, put together a list of onerous tasks that I have to do, sort through my calendar, answer an infinite number of emails. I was just telling Madison I have a 41 gigabyte inbox, delightful. And then go to meetings, talk to people, listen, and then go home. So that's kind of one way to approach my workday. But what actually is going on is really, as has been alluded to, is that, you know, here at the Institute and at many institutes and organizations in San Diego doing science, you really get to work with an amazing group of people. And I've said that kind of already, but I think it bears repeating. When I first started as a research assistant at Salk, the lab I was in had members from every continent on the planet. I mean, well, with one exception, Antarctica, but almost every continent. And we were all over the globe. And it's a really diverse and exciting, I think inherently exciting because of that, group of people. And as I said, having everyone kind of contributing to the science effort is super energizing. And I think it's fantastic.
That's interesting that you started off here at Salk as a research assistant. It shows one possible way that you can go. So maybe we'll go to our current research assistant and ask Sienna, what does the day look like in your career?
So I work in Christy Towers' lab, Dr. Christy Towers, who spoke earlier this week. So if you guys went to that, you learned a little bit about her, like our work in the lab. So what I do is a lot of benchtop research, and benchtop research isn't really like a job you can leave like at 5 p.m., like just like every other job. It's kind of, a lot of it is dictated by what experiments you're going to run that week. So some experiments can take a couple hours and some can take multiple days. So at the beginning of the week, I usually have a meeting with my boss, Dr. Towers, and we kind of go over my data from the week before and see where we can take the experiments this week and how I can plan it out. And this is an important step because like sometimes you need to use like a specific machine, but it's shared. So you have to like schedule the time, and then you have to set up experiments in a timely manner to make sure that they're ready at that exact time. So the schedule is always changing, but I kind of like that because it's every day is something new. Like you're running one experiment like today, but tomorrow you're doing something completely different. And at first I feel like it's a little overwhelming because you have to figure out how long it's going to take you to do one thing. But once you kind of get the hang of like how long it'll take you to finish this one experiment, you can kind of like start stacking things where you're just like, oh, I can set this up, and I know that there's like experiment A, there's like 2 hours in between where I have free, so I can do experiment B within those 2 hours. And it's like you're just stacking things, and it's at the end of the week you kind of just have a bunch of data that you go through that you just start all over again the next week. But like I said, it's really fun if you like this type of thing, like trying to figure out a question, or like at the end of the week you realize, oh, my experiment didn't work like I thought it would, so like how can we fix this? And that's what also the beginning of the week is for. Like, okay, how can we make this one little thing better that we messed up last week? So yeah, you get really used to it.
I think there's going to be probably a lot of students that really vibes with where they don't want this like an office job where they're just sitting at the desk doing the same thing over and over. So working as an RA or a research assistant, you can have some variability and do different techniques, learn different things, work with different people. So I think that's a really cool aspect of the job that it sounds like you really enjoy, and especially if it really kind of allows you to explore that passion of answering questions and doing puzzles when you're getting new puzzles probably every day, every week. But you had mentioned that you were interested in pursuing your PhD. We actually have someone that has a PhD and is beyond that and is in another stage of the career. So maybe Melissa, you can kind of tell us like what it looks like after you have a PhD.
Yeah, kind of very similar. So I completed my graduate work from Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon. And then I stayed on for a postdoc position there where I worked as a postdoctoral researcher for a few years. Took some time off to raise children and came back to San Diego, and I'm now starting a second postdoc. So nowadays, my day is similar. I do plan a lot of experiments and do experiments myself, but I also manage an undergraduate student who works under me. So I kind of take on the role of PI at times, of the manager of one particular student. I help plan experiments and figure out, my timeline for papers and grants. So there's a little bit more on top of managing the bench work and doing the scientific experiments. You're also kind of figuring out your research plan and your goals as a scientist and how you want to move the field forward. And with that, you're participating in journal clubs, reading papers, lab meetings, a lot of communication with other scientists and meetings to just kind of wrap your head around the fields and how to advance things further.
So it sounds like you're always in the process of learning, and that even though you have your
Always
PhD, you're not done. I think it's really interesting because at the PhD level, it sounds like you have a little bit more drive and where your experiments are going to go, and a little bit more like maybe that allows you to express some more creativity. That if that could be something that students are interested in and being creative in their science, because you don't always, sometimes people think, oh, art's over here and science is over here, but it requires a lot of creativity. So we also have a panelist who has a little bit more unique, though not necessarily what you'd come to think about instantly when you think of science. So Tanisha, can you talk a little bit about like why does an attorney work at Salk? How does that work? Tell us more.
So I actually started off at Salk many moons ago as a research admin and a project manager. And that's kind of how I got my footing into science. And then I went to law school, and then I thought, it'd be great to do some intellectual property. I have a master's of law in intellectual property. And I was like, and tech transfer because I love science. And so I came back to working at Salk because of that. Now, being in this role versus the former role, my work day is not typically the same. It's completely different. And every day I come into the office, whether I'm working from home or at the office, it's different each day, which is nice. I don't like the mundane. And so there are times where I have to go and I need to speak with one of my principal investigators, a PI, and say, hey, what kind of technologies are you dealing with? Or we have a request for a certain technology that someone wants to license. And so I get a chance to talk to them about their science, which is really cool. Other days I'm negotiating an agreement, and sometimes my negotiations go great. Sometimes I have some really mean attorneys on the opposite side that I have to deal with. And so each day is completely different, but it's not boring. Some people think, oh, dealing with science and law together is boring. No, it's nerdy, but it's not boring. And it's one of the most interesting facets of my life. And so again, my day is going to go from one day we'll be talking with my PIs and dealing with their science to trying to talk to someone else about the science to try to get it out there in the market, to the places like, I'm just going to name some names, not necessarily these people, but Merck or something of that sort, right? And then, or again, it could be about me dealing with other institutions on the opposite end, trying to negotiate an agreement. So there's just different facets. Every day is a different story, but it's a great day.
I think that your prior experiences, Salk, you're so familiar, not only, with the institution itself, but also with the science, because you've been on that side. So it really gives you a unique perspective that not all lawyers would have. So we're so glad to have you, and so glad that you stuck it out with Salk over the years. It's an interesting career path. I know that some students have, they're not sure of their path, but maybe if they have multiple passions, you've kind of illuminated a career that it touches on both. All right, so our next question from pre-submissions is, how did you become involved in lab work? So let's go ahead and start with, Melissa, would you mind telling us, I know you have a PhD and you're at this part, but what was your first days look like in the lab?
Yeah, so I first started doing lab work as an undergraduate at UC Irvine. I was a biology major and I was pre-med. I had no idea about careers in science, really. And someone just approached me and told me, there's this really great program that you could apply to. I was actually working at a coffee stand outside of the chemistry department. And it was another graduate student that came up to me and was like, you could be working in a lab and they'll pay you instead of being here making coffee. And so I decided to follow up on that. And it turned out to be an excellent program. It was called MBRS, and it funded a couple of years of research in a lab at UC Irvine. So that's when I first got my initial bench science experience. And from there, the more I learned about the field and that career path, I decided to pursue graduate school. And that's how I pretty much got started.
It's amazing to see like what, you never know what chance, like I feel like opportunity, like luck is just people who take advantage of opportunity. So it's like, an opportunity could presented itself to you and you having the courage to take advantage of that. Maybe someone who has never worked in a lab before and it can be intimidating, but the fact that you made that step can have a huge impact. Now, Tanisha, I know you said you started here in Salk in early 2000s. I read that in your bio. How did that happen for you? How was that your first step?
It was actually 1994, which is way back. I'm an old timer. But to be honest, I was only supposed to be at Salk for a 3-week assignment. So I'd worked for an attorney, and then there were layoffs because the work at the law office got to be so slow that they closed the law office. And so I went to a company that did some job placement places. And so it was a temporary assignment. And it's my first one that I ever did. And 3 weeks turned into 20 something plus years. Yeah. So that's how it happened.
Wow. So it's not necessarily even something, it just kind of was happened by chance and you tried it and you liked it. So I think that really speaks to like you never would that have been a position that you would have been excited for or to apply to, or is it not necessarily aligned with your interests at the time?
It did not align with my interests at the time. I wanted to be a prosecutor. I knew that I wanted to do the legal path. And so this was kind of a filler in the time being, and I didn't expect for it to go this long. One thing I do want to say is that it set me on a course that I didn't realize. Instead of becoming a prosecutor, I became an intellectual property attorney. I did civil litigation and family law for a number of years, but eventually I came to this side of intellectual property. And so you never realize that the paths that you take, just like Melissa said, hey, she was working somewhere doing the coffee stuff. She also had someone come up to her and say, hey, you could get paid for X, Y, and Z. And now she's got a PhD in life sciences. So you never know where your actions will take you to what career. Follow them. I mean, don't be afraid.
I think, yes, exactly. I think that don't be afraid. I think sometimes it can be intimidating, like, oh, if it's not a straight line, like, you don't know in high school that you're going to go major in a science and then you're going to go on to graduate school if that you couldn't succeed in science, but that's really not how it works. And I think that's what we've learned kind of from some stories that we've heard so far. What about for you, Sienna? Was it a straight line for you, like getting in started in lab work, or were you exploring other passions? I did see on your bio that you have an art history minor.
Yeah. I honestly, like, I got really into art history in high school when I took AP art history, and I kind of knew that I just wanted to do that. So I made it my minor. But my science career was also pretty random. I mean, I'm first generation. My parents didn't go to college. My grandparents can't even read or write. And I grew up in a low income area. So I didn't really know my options. I just knew that I liked science. And I was just like, okay, I'll just pick whatever science major sounds cool in Davis. So originally, I think I was a neurobiology major. And I eventually changed that to global disease biology. And which was kind of crazy timing with the pandemic. That's a whole other story. But I did also actually go into college thinking that I wanted to go to medical school because, like I said, I didn't really know my options. So I was just like, oh, okay, science, doctor, I guess. I also didn't actually know that a PhD could relate to science. When I thought of PhD, I always thought of oh, it's like literature or history or something like that. So that was also a shock to me in college. But one of the things that I did was, because I didn't know my options, I just read all the emails that were sent to me from as an undergrad. You just get tons of emails. And one of the emails was to apply to this program called BUSP, which was Biological Undergraduate Scholars Program. And it was for low income minorities, underrepresented minorities in science. So I applied and I got accepted, and they actually helped me get into a lab my second year of college. And at that point, I was deciding, I also had an internship at a hospital. So I was deciding between whether I liked the hospital life or if I liked research. And as I was doing my internship at the hospital, I was just like, wow, I'd really rather be in lab right now. And I just kind of like the whole lab aspect better. You're more independent. You get to like just ask the question and then go do something to answer it. So I kind of stopped on the medical school path and started pursuing research. And I worked in a lab from my second year to college till I graduated. And then I came here.
I think that like that you mentioned the fact that you were interested in going to medical school. I feel like a lot of students vibe with that. I know that's exactly kind of what I fell into. And I think I read something similar in Melissa's, that she was interested in pursuing medicine. But once you, maybe expand your horizons, and you might see that there's another path that's actually better fit for you. And now, Sandy, you mentioned that you're a first generation college student. Was there anyone that really helped guide you through the process of applying to college, that helped to support you to make that transition, since it might have been new for your family to navigate?
It was honestly my high school teachers. My parents didn't know how to help me with any of that stuff. So I just picked my favorite teacher and I was like, I need help. Like, I don't know what to do. So being honest with people around you, especially your teachers, if they can't help you, then ask someone like, do you know who I can talk to about this? You just have to be really honest and be like, I'm completely lost. If not, then they'll just be like, just look it up, like Google it, like it's not that big of a deal. So you have to like really sit down. It was my mostly my AP Lit teacher actually, who helped me with all that stuff. So I still talk to her constantly. And also my old science teacher, I got more involved with her when I decided that I was applying to a science program.
I think that's finding a good educator who can support you, or a good mentor to help guide you. Most people, like when you ask for help, or they genuinely want to support you and help provide that guidance. But if you're not brave enough to ask, then those connections, things don't happen, and it can feel a lot more intimidating. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story. And last but not least, Mark, how did you end up to be a research assistant in your early days?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I could summarize it by saying just sort of a passion in science and interest really was what got me involved in lab work. So I started actually maybe even a little bit earlier than Tanisha even. I started in 91. So a long time ago. And I, at the time, and still, I feel really fortunate to have started kind of on the bench in science, because that's kind of how I started out thinking about science, is doing experiments on the bench, so to speak. And kind of immediately got started participating in kind of collaborative science. And my first position was working in one of the larger laboratories here at Salk under the direct supervision of a really talented postdoc who kind of, shared her passion for scientific discovery and really kind of communicated the hard work required to be successful in science. And also back then, which is, as I said, back in 91, so this is quite a while ago, we were like pouring and running and fixing all these protein and sequencing gels ourselves, which is something that's kind of sometimes farmed out these days. But back then it was kind of a mix of intellectual challenge, but also, physical dexterity. And I liked that combination of really being physically involved in the science going on, which was great. So this postdoc, she kind of emphasized that good science takes planning and time and effort, but the rewards of moving a scientific project forward are really immense, really. And I think she was a really effective communicator of that feeling. Part of what motivated me in science really resonated with what Sienna said a few minutes ago, this idea of discovering things and learning something maybe somebody else doesn't know yet. What my situation was, I had in college, I had just finished my thesis, which had to do with sequencing hamster telomeres, kind of the ends of chromosomes, the physical ends. And when I applied at Salk, I was still kind of, giddy in a sense from seeing that first gel that kind of pointed to a novel DNA sequence in hamsters. And I can still sort of recall how exciting that was. It was kind of what I think it was the quintessential situation, which is all alone late at night in the lab and kind of going over things over and over until you convince yourself that this is actually something new and exciting. And that experience really thrilled me. It was great and is great. And that's kind of what connected me and involved me with lab work. That project, as almost everything in science was a collaboration and with my thesis advisor. And that's really kind of fundamentally what continues to drive me, is being in a collaborative environment and participating and sort of moving the ball forward in our pursuit of knowledge here.
I think that you're talking about like the excitements and things that you experienced when you were doing and then also I love that you touched on something that Sienna pointed out, which is how important it is that science is you're planning ahead. You're not just going and doing whatever experiments that you feel like. But I think that's a pretty good segue to our next question submitted from a student that says, what are some of the most interesting discoveries you've all made in the lab? So if there's anyone that feels passionately, they have something that's jumped into their mind. What is this discovery that you made in the lab?
Well, I mean, I can chime in again, I guess. So, sort of it makes me think of two things. One is I was able to contribute to kind of a new type of viral vector, lentiviral vectors. We did some work in putting together not just the technology, but also the facilities to safely handle those kind of vectors. That was super exciting. It was a really exciting time in science for me. And also just calling back to Sienna's comment about that feeling of imagining, or at least for me, probably not true, but imagining that I was the only person to sort of at that moment see this unique thing. And I still remember how exciting that was. And that's something that's just continues to resonate with me even, wow, even more than 5 years later. 30 years later.
It's amazing what things stick with you. And then Sienna or Melissa, do either of you have something maybe unexpected or interesting that you found in lab?
I can go ahead. So my work is a little different. It's electrophysiology, and you're kind of measuring neuronal activity or just ion channel activity in any type of cell that is electrically active in real time. So it feels like every day is a new discovery because although we know a lot about how neurons communicate and signal, there's always something new that you're observing and you're getting to watch it kind of happen in real time, learning about different types of neurons and the different electrical impulses that they have. That's what I get to do every day. So sometimes it doesn't feel like a major discovery if I'm not finding something completely new. But it is, I feel like every day learning something new from these cells, and it's truly amazing to see.
Yeah, I think that it's not even necessarily, but even just observing something that you've read in a paper and then getting to like validate that and see it for yourself, I think it's still interesting and an exciting moment. You know, it's like, oh, this works, this is true. And being able to see it for yourself, I feel like sometimes, you know, you read papers and you just have to kind of like, you know, trust the process, understand that they're doing it, and you can kind of envision it, but when you do something yourself, it's impactful. And then Tanisha, did you work on any cool projects or science while you were a project manager?
I did. There were two. One received a $21 million award, and the other one I think received a $40 million. And I think those were the two biggest ones Salk had received at that time. So one was Stand Up to Cancer, and the other one was a HINT, and that was with the Infectious Disease Lab. I think it's IMPL now, but those are really, really great to be able to get. So what we did was we had about 8 institutions for both of the projects doing research in certain areas on both of those projects. And so having a consortium together working on, so say, for example, with cancer, working on pancreatic and breast and liver, et cetera, and then coming together and going through those findings and providing that I think it was 5-year for the first one. Hent, I think, was a 4-year project. So it was great having hands-on experience, seeing everything from basically obscurity to notoriety, because look at Stand Up to Cancer now. They have, pretty big.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. So I'm a big fan of the Great British Bake Off, and they do a Stand Up to Cancer fundraiser. So no, like that's really cool that Salk has a connection to that. And I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing. Santa, is there anything you want to chime in or add, or you still are in the process of like trying to figure out what's been the most interesting?
I don't think I've been in science long enough to make a big discovery. Something that I've liked from my undergrad that I finally got to work after like months was I replicated one of the postdocs in the lab. She created this like system where we could genetically, like with CRISPR and like this other genotyping thing, we could change one base pair in a DNA sequence scarlessly. So like trying to do it without messing up anything else. And the whole process takes like a month before you figure out that it didn't work. So yeah, it took me a while. It took a long time, but I finally was able to get it. Literally like right before the pandemic hit, I finally got like a positive, like, oh, I finally made this G into an A, like when and it's perfect. But then the pandemic hit and I had to freeze down. So I don't know where that went, but it was really fun to just finally, after like months, be like, yes, I got this to work.
That must have been such a rewarding feeling to have all that month, because like you said, you don't know if you do all that month of work and then it failed. That must have felt like so rewarding. And I think that must have been very interesting and exciting. So very cool, different. I love that we all have kind of different stories and different kind of ways that things that have been interesting. And I'm sure that every day you found something interesting. But as you kind of develop in your career, maybe those things change and there's certain things that stand out. So we'll kind of bring you guys back a little bit. So when you went to college, what did you major in? And how much does the major affect your future lab position? So if there's anyone wants to jump in, maybe Santa, since you're unmuted, you talked a little bit about the global health. Like, how did you get started and how does that influence your position now?
Yeah, honestly, what you major in undergrad doesn't really impact your future career that much as long as you take the right classes. Like I knew someone who majored in art history, but she applied to medical school. So it's really dependent on finding out what you want to do and then just take the classes, the prereqs for that. Like I said, I majored in global disease biology, which isn't really what I'm doing now. Like I'm not a disease person. I don't want to like go work in the CDC, but I just thought it was interesting. And part of the major was also like I could build it in my own way. So I took my disease classes, but I was able to take a whole bunch of different science classes and like really emphasize on biology. And I also minored in art history. So that's something that doesn't really have anything to do with science. I just thought it was interesting. And that's really all it takes. In undergrad is just do something that you find interesting. And as long as you're taking the right classes, then and you get the grades and do all the internships, you should be fine. But the art history part is cool because now I work at the Salk, and the Salk is a really big like art historical landmark. I learned about it in high school. Like it was pretty cool.
I love that you talked about how like you don't have a set, just because you choose a major doesn't mean it completely sets your path for like you can't change gears. I think that's so true. And especially being able to explore multiple passions, like just because you're interested in science doesn't mean you can't pursue something like literature, art history, or study different cultures. There's all sorts of things. You can have multiple passions at once. Maybe Tanisha, can you tell us what was your major and then how much that impacted your future positions?
Definitely. My major was sociology. It has nothing to do with law, but it is the observation of human activity. And so it's the study of our behavior, which is great because I do a lot of negotiations. Like I said before, I was a litigator for a number of years and actually looking at people's behaviors and how they handled the way that they looked and their eyes going to the left or to the right, or their nervousness and their twitching and all that stuff. Same thing in negotiations. That comes in so handy. So while my sociology degree in undergrad does not translate to me being an attorney, it does help when it comes to negotiation, litigation, all those things, because people make gestures all the time, even without realizing it, they do it. And if you are keen to that and you pay attention to that, you can catch when people are lying or when they're bluffing or when they're omitting certain things. So that's my background.
As someone who can't control their face, I totally relate to that. So, I think we all have those unconscious things, and you never know like how like your background could really be a benefit in a future career, even though it's not always like a one-to-one connection. Melissa, what about for you? What did you major in, and how has that impacted your current work?
Well, I majored in biology, but I started off undecided. I am also a first generation college student. My parents did some community college, but they never completed a bachelor's degree. And going into college, I didn't really know what I wanted to study or major in. I've always been interested in nature and just have that connection to like animals. And so I thought, I'll just take my general education requirements and figure it out from there. But I think I took a women's physiology class that I was just fascinated with. And then I took an astronomy class, and it was really heavy physics. And I realized like I'm really good at math and science, and this is what I'm really interested in. So from there, I decided to declare biology as my major. But I agree that you can major in anything as long as you have the right coursework. But a biology major can be really useful because you do a lot of chemistry, physics, mathematics at really high levels. And all of that comes in handy for if you decide to be like an advanced scientist.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a good amount of background in any, so it allows you to kind of specialize in a variety of different fields. Yes. From the start, which is really cool. Mark.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat some of what I've already heard from both Sienna and Melissa, I think, in that I started off being interested in biology, and so it was a pretty linear path, I guess, for me. I like Melissa said, I shared an interest in animals and the natural world. That was always something that interested me. Since I'm going to be totally honest here, I did not like math and it didn't like me, but I knew I liked science. So I naively, in retrospect, thought biology had the least amount of math involved to get into it. So that actually was legitimately one of my motivations. These days, there's a lot of math in biology, and if you are good at math, come and participate in this biology enterprise. You'll be well rewarded. But I just always had an interest in biology, but I would also say, as has been said, you don't really, coursework's important, of course, and having a good background is great, but I would also say that you don't necessarily have to be in lockstep to enter this career path. I'll provide an example. One of our graduate students that we had in lab, majored in, I think, physical education and nutrition, and ended up contributing fundamentally to our understanding of how transcription factors work literally in every cell of your body, right? For example, this is like fundamental, groundbreaking science that was done by someone who did not have necessarily a traditional background in biology. So I think that just goes to show, if you have a passion for it, if you're interested in it, don't talk yourself out of a career in science or a career in biology. If you have a passion for it, go for it. You'll be rewarded. That's good.
Yeah. All right, we only have a couple minutes left, but we have two really great questions to ask. One's from the chat, so I'll ask. This one's a little bit heavier, so this one will probably take a look, and then maybe we'll end with a rapid fire with a piece of advice you'd like to share. You would have shared with your high school self. So that will be our final question. Is like kind of a rapid fire. But this question is, why should everyone understand some aspect of science? Is the hard work and time worth it? What helps you get through the tough times when you want to give up on something? That's kind of a loaded question. I'll read it one more time. Why should everyone understand some aspects of science? Is the hard work and time worth it? What helps you get through the tough times when you want to give up on something? So anybody who kind of jumps out, and you don't have to answer the entire question, but if there's a piece that stood out that you want to answer, feel free to unmute.
I can address, for me personally, just feeling empowered by the knowledge, like understanding how cells work, how my body works. Yeah, like with the latest COVID, for example, having a good solid, I'm not a virologist, I don't have, that background, but understanding basic biology to make educated choices, I think is really important. So that's my opinion on that.
Awesome. And then for your research, how do you get through the tough times when something doesn't work and you want to give up?
Yeah, that's probably, that's a really hard one. I think I'm naturally just a stubborn person. And so I like to just keep plugging away until I get something to work. But having a good support system and people who can help you solve problems, basically troubleshoot and figure out how to get past issues is really important. So building a good support system for yourself.
Very well said. Thank you, Melissa. Is there anyone else that'd like to chime in? Go
I
ahead,
like
Tanisha.
Definitely. So because I worked at the Salk for so long and I did stuff with gene expression, I knew about cancer, but as being the person who works in technology transfer, I have to know about replication and genetics and a lot of other parts of life sciences, neuro, even artificial intelligence. So when I first started at Salk, I felt like I was in over my head. It really felt like the water was up to my nose and it was really, really hard for me to get my footing. But one thing I knew is that if I learned some more about the science, even though I'm not a scientist, if I knew more about the science, then I'd be able to get some of that water to go down. So I went to MIT's website and they have an open courseware and they have videos from Eric Landau and other amazing professors. I mean, these are professors that teach students that go to MIT, the Broad Institute, et cetera. And I just started watching their videos, great videos. And I started learning more about the science that I was dealing with my principal investigators. And it completely gave me a huge footing in what I was doing. So all I'm saying is that sometimes if you feel like the water's getting there, do different things, go and reach out for help. If you can't find help, someone mentioned Google that, right? Find a place that you can go to that gives you the answers that you need, and then put the time and the work in. That's the big part. If I didn't put the time and work in, I wouldn't be as knowledgeable as I am today about science. A lot of people think that I have a scientist background, and I don't. But it's because I put the time and the work in to look at these videos, take the time, do my research. So that's what I'm going to just offer. If time gets rough, that's what you want to do.
Knowledge is very empowering, and you need to take that and do that research for yourself, and not just take, like I like that you said, like do research and go beyond it to really understand the sources and going to a credible source, such as like the MIT website or beyond. Mark or Sienna, is there anything you would like to chime in to add to that? Or I think those two answers have been pretty solid.
Yeah, I think those answers were great. And, great mentors and peers will get you through the tough times. And if you have an interest in one aspect of science, as I did, it'll open up doors to have interests in the other areas of science you might not have thought of. So this is important, I think, for everyone, whether you're in a science career or not.
Yeah, I think tough times mentors are so vital and so key. And I think that's something Sienna had touched on earlier. Sienna, is there any final things you'd like to add to that question? Things that get you through the tough time, or why it's important for everyone to understand the aspects of science?
Yeah, so I think, like Melissa said, having a good support system, like that was a big one for me. But also, like what I had to learn was like take a step back. Like if something's not working, like I get really frustrated because I'm pretty stubborn too, where like I'm just like, no, I have to figure this out today. But I think it's really good to take a step back, let it like sleep on it. Always sleep on it and come back the next morning and be like, okay, maybe I should just do this. Like that's also like a really big thing I had to learn was to be patient and like step back.
That's fabulous advice. Sometimes the problems don't look quite the same the next morning or the next day or the next week. So understanding that it's not always urgent, sometimes you can take time to think and process and get a better outcome. All right, so in our final minute, if we want to just do a rapid fire, thank you all to our panelists. This has been such an engaging discussion. I love that I've heard similar themes between all of you. So if you could just share with us, what's one piece of advice that you would give to a high school student that's interested in just in the next steps, like going to college, pursuing a career? So what's a piece of advice?
I'll go first, sorry.
Yeah.
I think a big thing that I had to learn was your past does not look like everyone else's. And I feel like that's something that's said a lot, but it's like something you have to tell yourself, because I'm like, yeah, like I know, like I'm different, but it's like, no, I mean, for me, all my like I have a lot of friends that went straight into PhD, and I didn't. I came to work at the Salk for a couple of years. So it's really hard. Like, oh, like they're already starting and I'm still here. But my path is different, and I'm getting all this other new experience, and I'm taking more classes, and I'm doing all this other stuff. So just don't compare yourself to someone that's not doing what you're doing.
Yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. I totally agree. Mark, what about for you? What's a piece of advice that you'd have for a high school student?
Yeah, I think diversity is incredibly important. And if you have a different path that gets you to whatever career you choose, that literally means you have something special to offer, which is amazing. There is one piece of advice that I guess if I could go back in time and carry one thought with me to the stage of life you might be in now, is that your teachers and your professors want you to succeed. And I think that's an important thought, because it really kind of, at least for me, globally affects how one can approach things. And if you think about that your teacher really wants you to succeed, and you keep asking questions, you'll have a great career no matter what it is. And I think that's a good thing to keep with you. So that's my advice.
Absolutely. Ask for help. The answer is always going to be no if you don't ask. So excellent. Tanisha, if you want to share with us a piece of advice.
Don't be afraid to do something new. Step out of your comfort zone. You never know what you'll find, and you never know if you'll like it. Good luck to everyone.
Absolutely. And to finish this out, Melissa, a piece of advice.
I'd say just be yourself and follow your interests. Know that you're growing and changing, and those interests might change as well. But just finding something that you're passionate about and that you're genuinely just interested in and want to continue to do will help you be successful in anything you do.
All right, so thank you to everyone in our audience for attending tonight's career panel. If you have any questions after this Zoom about our programs or about, or if you'd like a little bit more information about any of our panelists, check out our website, or you can reach us at education@salk.edu. If you'd like to learn about our high school internship program, you can, again, visit our website. There's a whole page about all the information. And then if you want to learn more about any of the different labs that were talked about today, or to learn about the Salk Institute in general, you can go to salk.edu/science to learn more. So thank you so much to all of our incredible panelists for sharing with us your journeys, giving us a little bit of insight about your career, and for just taking the time to impact the next generation of scientists as they're looking to navigate the path that we once walked. So thank you so much. I would like to thank, again, all the teachers that have supported the event and shared with the students. We look forward to interacting with you all again soon. Everyone have a great evening. Stay safe, stay healthy. Until next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.